Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Elise. I hope you're all doing so good today. We are going to be going over my 5-star predictions recap. So last year in 2022, I came out with a 5-star predictions video right when I first started YouTube, and I started my channel exactly halfway through the year. So I think it was right at the end of June and the beginning of July. So I only had 6 months to read them if I was going to read them all in the year. So I just told myself, like, as I was getting close to the end of the year and I got sick in December, that I would just carry them into the next year, and regardless, I would finish them before June. So I would have more time for my 2023 predictions, which that video will be coming out later in the month. But I divided them into categories. So I picked 5 books that were backlist from my shelves that I thought would be 5 stars. And then I also picked 5 new releases that I thought might be 5 stars. All of them were authors that I had not previously read from. That is a rule that I'm going to continue into the next year for myself. Is like, part of this is for me to get into new authors. For authors that I've already read something and loved it by, I am probably going to pick up that author in the future, and that's more of a sure bet. But I really wanted this project to be getting me into authors that I think I would love, but I have not had the chance to read yet. So those are the small parameters for the project. And I will say, overall, this was very successful. So I had 10 books in total. I'll show you the little stack here. I don't own all of them. I own 7. 3 of them were library books, and I haven't picked them up yet. 2 I will be picking up, 1 I will not. But yeah, overall, this project was very successful. I had a very high hit rate, and just so you know, so you're kind of aware going in, that I think 7 of the books that I picked were 5 stars, and then the other 3 were 4 stars. So nothing lower than a 4 star, which is amazing because that means I at least enjoyed all of them, if not loved the vast majority of them. So I'm very excited. It was so fun to get to do this experience. And I feel like it also helped me track a little bit more of like how I might plan out my next round of 5-star predictions and things to maybe look out for. So I'll talk about that as we get into it. But let's go ahead and start like going over the books. I'm not going to give super in-depth reviews or anything like that because we'll just be here forever. But I'll give a little bit of the synopsis, a little bit of what I loved about it, and go from there. So I will start with the backlisted books that I read. And I think the first one that I ended up getting to was this one, was In the Dream House by Carmen Machado. This is published by Grey Wolf, and this is a memoir. I think this was the only nonfiction that I had on the list. Yes, this was the only nonfiction. This I said in my original 5-star predictions video, which I will link down below if you want more in-depth thoughts on the synopsis, that this was probably the surest bet. Everybody loves this. I knew I would love this too. It's very experimental, so each section is told with a different lens. So it'll be Dream House as Epiphany, or Dream House as River Lathe, stuff like that. So it adds sort of additional context to her time in an abusive relationship with another woman. So that is In the Dream House. I absolutely loved it. I loved it even more than I thought I would, and it was already so hyped, so I was a little worried about the hype, but it was so well done. I love the formatting of it, that we got all this additional information imbued into the memories that she's sharing because it has like a trope or something like that. I really thought that added a lot to it. And I love that it was just like, here is a memory and I'm just leaving it there for you to look at. I'm not trying to, make you feel a certain way about it or anything like that. It's just there, and this is my experience. And I adored that. So this was amazing. I highly recommend adding to all the voices that say it's great. But yeah, that is In the Dream House. That one was definitely a 5-star. The next one I got to in the backlisted ones is Girl, Woman, Other. I think this might get confusing, the order. But this one is published by Black Cat and is by Bernadine Evaristo. This is what I would almost say is interconnected short stories. I know that this says it's a novel, but for me it really is interconnected short stories. And it's divided into sections, and each section contains 3 stories, each story being about a different woman. So 3 women in each section, they each get their own story, and then there's multiple sections. And each story will have sort of a main character woman that it's following, and then one of the side characters in their stories will be in the next one. So it's showing how they're all connected. It's almost got this like butterfly effect thing happening of like decisions made in one story have ramifications in another story, and that was very brilliant. And I think this just does what it wants to do very well. It wants to be showing the Black British female experience in many different ways, because they often get stereotyped or typecasted into specific roles that are often racist. So this is doing exactly what it wants to do. It's just showing the wide array of experiences of a Black British woman. And so I think for that reason alone, it's accomplishing what it wants to do. And I also gave this one 5 stars. Next one I read was Pew by Catherine Lacey. This is one of the ones I gave 4 stars. I very much enjoyed it. This is published by FSG, and this one follows a person who shows up one day on a church pew. They slept there and then are hence named Pew afterwards by the community. And the community is a very like predominantly white Christian fundamentalist community. They are trying to make sense of who this person is. They are very androgynous looking, and you can't really tell what race they are or anything like that. So a family decides to take this person in, and things ensue from there. This book is highly unsettling. I was amazed at the tension it built the whole time. Even though like plot-wise there's nothing absolutely absurd happening, there is this sort of backdrop of a festival. You know, there's this festival that everyone keeps talking about, and they talk about it in really cryptic ways. There's something about it that seems menacing, but you don't really know what it is. You do find out what it is at the end of the book. So there is some like plot payoff there, but this is really just about the ways that religion in general, but specifically Christianity here, can put people into boxes and really other people who don't fit into those boxes, which is purportedly the thing that they're trying to work against in the first place. They're supposed to be like inclusive, but then in actuality, that's not how things play out. This was also very good. I enjoyed it and would highly recommend Pew as well. Next up in the backlist ones, we had Stay With Me, another 5 stars. This is by Ayobami Adebayo and published by Knopf. This thing was plotty AF, okay? Like, I was not prepared for all of the twists and turns of this. It was wild, but this is really all about infertility. So it follows a woman, Yejide, who is married to, what's his name? Akin, I think? Yeah, Akin. She is struggling to get pregnant, and they're living in Nigeria, so it is somewhat of a common practice to take multiple wives, and he is getting a lot of pressure from his family to take an additional wife in order to have kids. But that is something that him and Yejide had previously discussed that they would never ever do. You know this from the blurb, but he ends up taking a second wife, and we see what unfolds from there. This is heartbreaking. Crazy things happened. I could not believe what was happening, but also it just like held very well with some of the sensitive topics that were going on here, and really coming to grips with what your identity is as a woman with and without children, and also the complications in a marriage, that even if you have a lot of love for someone, bad things can happen and you have to find a way to deal with that. And you know, there are ramifications to that. So lots of good things to say about this. I very much enjoyed it, and it is page turning. So if you haven't already read this, highly encourage you to do so. And the last one for the backlisted books is one that I read very recently. I just read it in February, and that is Milk Fed. And this is by Melissa Broder. It's published by Scribner. I have been wanting to read this for so long. I've been wanting to read Melissa Broder for so long. I also own the Pisces, and I'm very motivated to pick it up. This follows a woman who is in the grips of an eating disorder. I mean, in it. And they go to this frozen yogurt shop regularly, and they show up one day, and there is a woman who is serving there who is in a larger body and is very much okay with being in a larger body and unapologetic about who she is. And the protagonist, whose name is Rachel, becomes increasingly infatuated with her, and they start having, you know, a friendship and relationship. They're also both Jewish, and that plays out in the story as well in kind of interesting ways. And similar to the Catherine Lacey book, is confronting some of the ways that religion can exclude people, which is doing the exact opposite of what it's supposed to be doing. And yeah, this was very funny and also very relatable. So, you know, diet culture is pervasive, and I related to so many things in this book. I very much enjoyed it. And this is also highly sensual. There's lots of sex. Sometimes the sex is meant to be sexy and sometimes it's not. Highly enjoyed this. Love the cover, and definitely recommend, again, if you haven't picked this up. So those are the 5 backlisted books. Bangers all around. And now we'll talk about some of the new releases that I read. And the first one that I want to talk about, I'm not going to go in order because I don't even remember at this point. This was a 4-star. This is Julia and the Shark, and this is by Millwood Hargrave and illustrated by Tom DeFreston. This is sort of like a picture book, but there is a decent amount of text. So let me try and find an illustration. So like the chapters start with illustrations. There's pages that are full illustration like that. And this is all about a girl whose family moves to a lighthouse because her father is going to be doing repairs on that lighthouse for a given summer. And her mother is struggling with some type of mental illness. You don't know in the beginning, but you do find out later on in the book. Yeah, she's trying to help her mother as she sees symptoms coming out and she doesn't really understand what's happening. I think it handled that mental illness very well. I don't think it was like exploitative of people who have that experience. I think it was an apt depiction of that. And yeah, I think it was really heart-wrenching, but overall hopeful, which is the nice thing about children's literature, is it tends to have a hopeful vibe. So yeah, I highly enjoyed this as well. It just didn't, like, it wasn't a new favorite book of all time. So that is Julia and the Shark, and this one is published by Orion. The other 4-star that I had was the Akwaeke Emezi romance novel, You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty. And that one I also highly enjoyed. It breaks a lot of the traditional romance tropes because you really don't know what's happening, and like maybe even who the love interest is for the like half of the book. The only reason this didn't get 5 stars for me is there were a couple of scenes in it that I felt were problematic. And I just felt like if the gender roles had been reversed, people wouldn't have been okay with it. But like for some reason, people were okay with it in this. I just don't really understand. But that was the reason why I couldn't give it 5 stars. Otherwise, I very much enjoyed it as a romance. It was steamy. The steam starts from the get-go. It starts right away. And this follows a woman who has previously lost her husband in a car crash, and she is an artist and trying to get back out in the dating world. You sort of follow her from there, and it ends up, I won't tell you how, but like she ends up going on a vacation to an island somewhere, tropical island somewhere, I can't remember where, ends up finding herself a little bit. So that's the setup for this. It was very enjoyable. Again, the writing was great. I had read Akwaeke and Emezi before, and yeah, definitely recommend if you're looking for a romance that is not predictable. So yeah, that will deliver for sure. And then the other 3 new releases I gave 5 stars. The first one being Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer. Oh, I loved this. I loved this. This is published by Scribner. And this also has some experimental form in it. There'll just be like sections like that, sections like that. And I tandem read this. So I listened to the audiobook as I was reading this. And it was fascinating to hear how the narrator would like do passages like this. There's also passages where like the words are big and small, and so they would like yell some and whisper some. So it was great. I highly recommend using both formats if you can, because it is also nice to be able to see it with your own eyes. This follows a family in which the mother has just been, re-diagnosed with cancer. So they were in remission for a while and now they have cancer again. And it's like pretty sure that this round is going to be terminal. There's her perspective where she's reflecting on the past and all of the experience she's had that make up a life. And I really loved that. Like, that is something that I am a sucker for, of going back and having this profound gratitude in some ways for all of these small moments that make up your life. And then being realistic about all of the grief and the anger and everything else that comes with life too, and the second guessing of certain choices. So loved that. That was my favorite perspective by far. But you also get the perspective of her husband and also her daughter. And I thought that rounded out the experience nicely, especially this experience of grief that can be so dynamic and so unique. So I appreciated getting all of the perspectives for sure. But yeah, my heart is with the mother, what's her name? Leah. My heart is with Leah. So that was Maps for Our Spectacular Bodies. Adore this. It's so good. Please pick this up if that sounds interesting to you. The other 2 were library books, so I will put them up here. The first one being Our Wives Under the Sea. Again, adored this book. This is by Julia Armfield, and lots of people loved this. This is a horror novel, but I would say it's not traditional horror. It's more like quiet horror, or I guess you could say it's like literary horror, but it follows 2 women. Leah, I think, is also one of them, Leah and Miri. And one of them is like a marine biologist or a scientist, something to do with the water. And they are going on a submarine mission that is supposed to be 6 weeks, and it ends up being 6 months. And then her wife is back home not knowing what the fuck happened. So there's like no contact. She's not sure what happened. And then when her wife finally does return, she is not the same. For me, I've said this before, this book is all about trauma and the physical and relational effects of trauma. Yeah, that it sort of manifests in some cool ways that only horror can do. Of like, there's some body horror that I think is a great representation of what can happen physically to your body. I mean, like, not like literally, but the like profound changes that you can have in your body after experiencing trauma. And then it also shows like, how do you have connection with people when you have fundamentally changed as a human being based on this experience that you've gone through? And what happens if you're no longer compatible with the people that you once loved because of this experience? And I just, it was so deeply felt for me, and such a unique representation of what a traumatic experience can do. And yeah, it was heartbreaking, but there's also so much love between them because you go back and forth in time of like what happened before the mission. You also do get some snippets of the mission itself, and that's a little bit of like the intrigue of like what actually happened down there, and has a horror element as well. But yeah, highly recommend. So many people love this, and for good reason. So please pick up Our Wives Under the Sea. And then the last one was We Had to Remove This Post by Hanna Bervoets. And this is translated by Emma Rault, I believe. And this one is about a group of content moderators. That is what brought me in. Like, that just sounds fascinating to me as we get into this age of like needing more and more content moderators as our lives are increasingly online. I think the setup of this was very well done because you follow a bunch of people starting the content moderator job at the same time, and they start by going through training and then they show you them actually in the job. There is a main character, but you are getting to see a bunch of them. This goes off the rails, as you would imagine it might, just showing the effects of what it's like to see violent content repeatedly throughout your day, almost every day, and the wide range of experiences that people have going through that. And that's why I liked that it had a full cast of characters that you got to see from the start to kind of, I think it goes like a year in or something like that. This also has some really interesting conversations on what it means to be the bad guy or bad person and how to know if you are the bad guy or not. And I just love conversations like that. I think it's very fascinating. Yeah, and again, this goes off the rails at the end, so know that. It's also very short. I just adored all these books. Like, this experience was so nice getting to read these books and sort of forcing myself to read particularly some of the backlists that I've had for forever. I've wanted to get to them, and this sort of made me prioritize them a bit more. It was, yeah, a great experience, and kudos to me because, like, I know my taste. We were there. We were in it, and I'm very proud of myself for that. So I'm excited to do my next round of 5-star predictions, so keep an eye out for that. And let me know, one, what you thought of any of these, but what are 5-star predictions that you have for yourself that have sort of, you've been hearing about them more recently, or they've been on your shelves forever, and you just feel like you know you're gonna love them? What are those books for you? And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.